Hello, my name is Raihan Rashid, and before I present on behalf of Trilak Nandan, a quick note. The author of this paper is actually anonymous, as Helen Jervis mentioned, who wrote it under the name uh, Trilak Nandan, and he decided to participate here anonymously because he cannot be here openly. Trilak is a friend and a colleague of mine. He is a genocide scholar from Bangladesh, and in today's climate, which Trilak's paper will further elaborate, as you'd see, even academics and intellectual exercises carry considerable risks these days. So Trilak asked me to present his work with you so that his voice can at least be heard. And perhaps today his very absence here speaks louder than his presence could. So let me present Trilak Nandan's paper, not verbatim, but due to the time shortage, I'm doing it in my own words. Trilak's central argument is stark. He argues that denial is not a symptom of genocide, it is its very engine. Denial hides atrocities, silences victims, and normalizes cruelty. It is the mechanism through which perpetrators justify violence and the world rationalizes inaction. In Bangladesh, denial has become systemic, political, institutional, and cultural, and which is feeding directly into persecution and the collapse of accountability. So, what happened in Bangladesh since August 2024? After Sheikh Hasina's ouster on 5th of August 2024, after her resignation, the country entered what can only be described as managed chaos. Under the interim rule of Nobel laureate Dr. Muhammad Yunus, the rhetoric of renewal and people's reform has masked an organized campaign of cleansing, control, and even erasure. What began initially as a student protest against the quota system, as Irene has mentioned, soon revealed the hallmarks of an engineered uh, movement, like any other so-called color revolution. It was externally influenced, tightly choreographed, and politically weaponized. Behind it stood a coalition of actors sharing one agenda, that is, dismantling the pro-liberation legacy in Bangladesh. Banned Islamist groups, anti-liberation networks, certain left factions, and a constellation of national and international NGOs and influencers, they converged. These all produced, at the end, a national citizens party, a political party. It is a new political front born out of unrest, which now
Excuse
enjoys.
me, Rehan, are you intending to move the slides or is
No,
somebody else?
just one slide.
Just one slide.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Keep going.
So this new political front, it is enjoying the support and patronage from Dr. Mohammad Yunus. You know him, he is a Nobel laureate. So what is the role of denial? The new state in Bangladesh now speaks two languages, one for the world and the other for home. At home, repression is justified as people's will. In abroad, the same thing is framed as democratic transition. Memorials of the 1971 genocide have been vandalized. Teachers, journalists, cultural figures have been arrested or disappeared. Minority and Sufi communities have faced coordinated attacks. All of this wrapped in a narrative of reform, a classical case of denial by rebranding. And then there is historical revisionism and erasure. Foundational truths are being rewritten. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the father of the nation, is being replaced by alternative heroes. Liberation slogans are criminalized. Textbooks are rewritten to cast Bangladesh's 1971 genocide as political overreach rather than moral awakening. This is more than propaganda, it is moral inversion. When history itself, particularly one of genocide, is denied, the past becomes a blank check for new violence. And then there is authoritarian consolidation. Trilak, in his paper, calls this stage as the mirror phase, where regimes begin to accuse their opponents of precisely what they practice, what they themselves practice. For example, those resisting repression are branded as fascists, even as the government itself, the government, I mean the current government, exhibits textbook fascist traits. mass arrests, censorship, surveillance, and the use of mobs as instruments of political enforcement. So denial here operates as a political camouflage. It transforms persecution into patriotism, and it transforms cruelty into civic duty. Even the International Crimes Tribunal, once a symbol of justice for 1971 genocide, is being dismantled and institutionally captured. Verdicts are reviewed, records altered, and prosecutors and investigators are persecuted, as Irene's presentation, you have heard from her. So one moment captured it all. Of all these, particularly the one moment that is very relevant to the ICT's prosecution and the outcome. A convicted genocidaire, Azhar, he was publicly released, and it was hailed as reconciliation. That single act flipped the moral compass of the nation. As chief advisor, Dr. Yunus sits at the center of this web. He has described the July-August movement as very meticulously designed. It was a revealing admission, as you can see, from the man directly, who himself is directing all the policies. His global aura of humanitarian respectability shields his government from scrutiny, even as persecution expands under his watch. So the early warning indicators, what are the early warnings? Measured against established frameworks, Bangladesh now displays multiple early warning signs of genocide. For example, targeted persecution of political and ethnic minorities, state-tolerated violence against dissenters, erosion of judicial and media independence. Then there is organized denial and historical revisionism that I mentioned already. Economic and social disenfranchisement of victim groups. In September last year, 2024, the Lemkin Institute issued a genocide red alert on Bangladesh, as many of you can recall, as these are not just isolated incidents, because they form a coherent pattern of dehumanization and control. And then there is international silence. So far, global reaction has been ultra cautious, but I would say essentially non-existent. Statements of concern replace acts of courage. As Trilok writes, silence is not neutrality, it is alignment with power. He drew a very interesting parallel with the Reichstag fire. In 1933 Germany, as you all know, the Reichstag fire allowed Hitler to impose emergency decrees, suspend rights, and consolidate absolute power. In Bangladesh too, anarchy, lawlessness, and breakdown of rule of law serve a similar function to justify further repression in the name of restoring order. So when fear itself is manufactured, authoritarianism needs only excuses. We know that. So what are the preventive and accountability measures that we can advocate for? What still can be done? One, Trilok says, confront denial head on. It has to be confronted. And in order to do that, we have to refuse all sorts of sanitization of language of atrocity. We have to reinforce accountability. We have to protect what remains of the justice system, the universities, and independent media. We have to shield vulnerable communities, minorities, and dissenters. Minorities and dissenters are the early targets and often the first indicators of what is to come. We have to demand international vigilance. The world cannot claim ignorance later. The red flags are already visible. Because never again only means something if it begins before the killing. Otherwise, it's just a meaningless phrase. So, in conclusion, what we can say, the denial doesn't close a genocide, it opens the next one. Bangladesh today stands on that precipice. The signs persecution, impunity, historical revision, historical distortion are all there. The Lemkin Institute's warning was not alarmism, it was foresight. The question now is whether we will recognize denial for what it is, not an argument about the past, but an alarm about the present. Because denial kills twice, first the victims and then the truth. I thank you all on behalf of Trilak Nandi.